First contact gone wrong. The Zalari Empire had ruled the outer spiral for 3,000 years. Their crystalline ships, powered by quantum singularities and protected by shields that bent spacetime itself, were considered the pinnacle of galactic engineering. No species had ever challenged their dominance, and Fleet Commander Korthax intended to keep it that way. From his command throne aboard the flagship Eternal Supremacy, Korthax observed the holographic display showing their territory's border. His forearms moved gracefully across the control interfaces, while his primary eyes focused on an anomaly that had just appeared on their long-range sensors. A single vessel moving at sublight speed had entered Zalari space without authorization. Analysis complete. "Commander," reported Subcommander Velix, her voice harmonizing through multiple vocal cords. "The intruder appears to be using primitive fusion drives and electromagnetic shielding. Metallurgical composition suggests iron-based alloys. No quantum signatures detected. Classification: pre-ascension civilization, threat level negligible." Korthax's mandibles clicked in amusement. Another primitive species had stumbled into their space, probably lost or exploring beyond their capabilities. It happened occasionally. The standard protocol was simple: disable their ship, capture the crew for study, and either integrate them as servants or eliminate them if they proved troublesome. "Deploy Intercept Squadron 3, Korthax ordered. "Minimal force. We want specimens intact for the Xenobiology Division. 6 Zalari attack craft, each one a masterpiece of technology that could destroy a moon with ease, streaked toward the unknown vessel. As they approached, more details became clear. The ship was roughly cylindrical, about 400 meters in length with a bulky, almost crude appearance. Its hull was scarred and pitted, suggesting it had seen considerable use. Strange protrusions dotted its surface, which the Zalari identified as primitive kinetic weapon systems and communication arrays. The name painted on its side in alien script translated to UNSC Perseverance. The Zalari linguistic algorithms quickly decoded the transmissions coming from the vessel. The creatures calling themselves humans were broadcasting on multiple frequencies, attempting to establish communication. Squadron leader Tychos found it almost pathetic. These humans were using radio waves of all things. His species had abandoned such primitive communication methods millennia ago. He opened a channel to the human vessel, more out of curiosity than necessity. "Unknown vessel, you have entered Zalari space without permission. Shut down your engines and prepare to be boarded. Compliance will result in merciful treatment. Resistance will result in immediate termination." The response came after a brief delay. A human appeared on the communication screen, wearing what appeared to be a utilitarian gray uniform. The creature had only 2 arms, 2 eyes, and patches of fur on its head. Primitive indeed, though Tychos noted the eyes held an interesting intensity. "This is Captain Amanda Torres of the United Nations Space Command vessel Perseverance. We are on a peaceful exploration mission, and were unaware we had entered claimed space. We apologize for any intrusion and request safe passage to continue our journey." Tychos's 3 mouths formed what his species considered a smile. "Negative, human. You are now property of the Zalari Empire. Surrender immediately." Captain Torres's expression changed slightly, the soft features hardening in a way that Tychos didn't quite understand. "I'm going to give you one chance to reconsider that statement. We are not property. We are free beings and we will remain so. Allow us to leave peacefully, or we will defend ourselves." The absurdity of the threat made Tychos laugh. A sound like breaking crystal, a single primitive vessel against 6 Zalari attack craft. He cut the communication and gave the order to disable the human ship. The Zalari craft moved in perfect formation, their directed energy weapons charging. They would target the engine systems first, then the weapon arrays, leaving the crew compartments intact. It was a maneuver they had performed countless times before. The first indication that something was different came when the human ship suddenly erupted with activity. Ports along its hull opened and hundreds of small objects launched into space. The Zalari sensors dismissed them as debris or primitive missiles, easily handled by their point defense systems. Then the objects exploded, not with the directed force of antimatter or the elegant destruction of singularity weapons, but with crude nuclear fire that flooded space with electromagnetic radiation and superheated plasma. The Zalari shields held easily against the actual explosions, but the radiation played havoc with their sensitive scanning equipment. For crucial seconds they were blind. When their sensors cleared, The human ship was no longer where it had been. Impossible. No vessel of that size could maneuver so quickly without inertial dampeners that the humans clearly didn't possess, unless they're killing themselves with those maneuvers, Velix observed from the command ship, watching the tactical display. The gravitational forces inside that vessel must be crushing them. But the human ship kept moving, its fusion drives burning at levels that should have melted them to slag. More objects launched from its hull, but these were different, smaller, faster, and moving in erratic patterns that made them nearly impossible to track. They attached themselves to the Zalari craft's shields and began doing something unprecedented. They were learning. Each device that attached to a shield began transmitting data back to the human ship, analyzing the quantum frequencies, mapping the harmonic resonances. Within minutes, the humans had gathered more information about Zalari shield technology than most species learned in decades of study. Tychos ordered his squadron to open fire, but the human ship was ready. As the directed energy beams lanced out, the Perseverance deployed what looked like clouds of metallic chaff, but each piece was actually a tiny mirror, positioned with impossible precision. The energy weapons scattered, reflected, and refracted, turning the space between the ships into a deadly light show that made accurate targeting nearly impossible. Then the humans returned fire. The Zalari were prepared for energy weapons or missiles. They were not prepared for what the humans actually used: solid projectiles, nothing more than shaped pieces of tungsten and depleted uranium, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed by magnetic rails. Kinetic weapons were considered obsolete by galactic standards, too slow, too easy to dodge or deflect. But the humans hadn't just fired them straight. Each projectile was smart, equipped with tiny thrusters and guidance systems. They curved through space, adjusted their trajectories, and worst of all, they coordinated. The projectiles worked together, herding the Zalari craft into predictable positions, cutting off escape routes. The first Zalari ship to fall didn't even understand what had happened. A tungsten rod, no larger than a ground vehicle, punched through its shields at a precise quantum frequency gap that the humans had identified and exploited. The rod passed through the ship's power core, and the resulting explosion lit up the void like a small star. Commander Korthax watched in disbelief as a second ship fell, then a third. These humans were not fighting like any species the Zalari had encountered. They weren't following the established rules of space combat. They were chaotic, unpredictable, and terrifyingly effective. All ships converge on the human vessel, Korthax ordered, his voice carrying the harmonics of barely controlled rage. Overwhelming force authorized. The entire Zalari fleet, 40 ships strong, began moving toward the lone human battleship. Surely no single vessel, no matter how cunning its crew, could stand against such odds. Captain Torres appeared on the communication screen again, and this time, Korthax noticed something that chilled him to his core. The human wasn't afraid. There was no fear in those strange forward-facing eyes. Instead, there was something else, something the Zalari had never encountered in a prey species: determination mixed with what almost looked like pity. "Commander, I tried to warn you," Torres said quietly. "We humans have a saying: if you want peace, prepare for war. We've been preparing for a very long time. This is your last chance. Withdraw your fleet and we can discuss this like civilized beings. You destroyed 3 of my ships," Korthax roared. "And you tried to enslave us," Torres replied, her voice steady. "Where we come from, that's considered an act of war. But I'm willing to forgive that misunderstanding if you are." The commander's response was to order all weapons to fire. 40 ships released their full arsenal at the human vessel. Enough firepower to crack a small moon rained down on the Perseverance. What happened next would be debated in Zalari military academies for generations. The price of underestimation. The space around the Perseverance erupted into controlled chaos. As the Zalari fleet's combined firepower converged on the human ship, Captain Torres gave an order that her crew had drilled for countless times but never thought they'd actually execute. "Deploy the shell. All hands, brace for high-G maneuvers. Medical teams, stand by." The shell was humanity's answer to overwhelming firepower, born from decades of theoretical warfare planning and the paranoid certainty that somewhere in the cosmos, they would meet a superior force. Thousands of hexagonal plates launched from concealed ports across the Perseverance's hull. each one containing miniaturized fusion reactors and magnetic field generators. They linked together in seconds, forming a geometric barrier that completely enclosed the ship. The Zalari weapon struck the shell, and space itself seemed to scream. Energy that could vaporize asteroids was absorbed, converted, and redistributed across the entire defensive network. Each hexagonal plate shared the load with its neighbors, spreading the devastating force across thousands of connection points. The shell glowed white-hot, then blue, then descended into frequencies the Zalari couldn't even see. Inside the Perseverance, the crew felt the ship shudder and groan. The inertial dampeners, pushed far beyond their specifications, couldn't completely compensate for the forces involved. Several crew members passed out from the gravitational stress, but automated medical systems were already responding, injecting them with cocktails of drugs designed to keep the human body functional under extreme conditions. Shell holding at 73%, reported Lieutenant Commander Jack Harrison, blood trickling from his nose. "We can't take another barrage like that." "We won't have to," Torres replied, her hands dancing across her command interface. "Execute swarm protocol." The hexagonal plates of the shell suddenly separated, but they didn't fall away. Instead, they reconfigured, each one becoming an independent attack drone. The fusion reactors that had powered the defensive barrier now drove weapon systems and thruster arrays. In seconds, the Perseverance had gone from one ship to one ship, plus 3,000 combat-capable drones. The swarm moved like a living thing, flowing around and through the Zalari formation. Each drone was individually weak, its weapons barely capable of scratching Zalari shields, but there were so many of them, attacking from every angle, targeting every weak point simultaneously. They forced the Zalari to split their attention, their fire, their shield power across thousands of vectors. And while the Zalari fleet dealt with the swarm, the Perseverance itself went on the offensive. The human battleship's main gun, which had been charging during the entire engagement, finally fired. It wasn't an energy weapon or a kinetic projectile. It was something the Zalari had theorized but never successfully created: a directed gravitational pulse. The invisible wave rippled through space, warping the fabric of reality itself. Shields designed to stop matter and energy were useless against the fundamental distortion of space-time. 3 Zalari ships were caught in the pulse's path, their elegant crystalline hulls crumpled like paper, compressed by gravitational forces that exceeded those at the heart of a star. In seconds, they were reduced to hyperdense spheres of matter no larger than escape pods. Commander Korthax felt something he had never experienced in 300 years of military service: doubt. These humans were not following any predictable pattern. Every tactic the Zalari employed was countered by something unexpected, something that shouldn't have been possible with the primitive technology the humans appeared to possess. "Commander," Valix called out, her voice strained, "I'm detecting something unusual. The human ship's power signature doesn't match their visible technology. It's as if they're deliberately hiding their true capabilities." Before Korthax could respond, Captain Torres sent another communication request. This time, when her image appeared, she was standing rather than sitting, and behind her the bridge of the Perseverance was visible. It was not what the Zalari expected. Instead of the cramped, utilitarian space they had imagined, it was sophisticated, with holographic displays and interfaces that rivaled their own. "Commander Korthax," Torres began, her tone different now, more formal. "I need you to understand something. Humanity has been spacefaring for less than 2 centuries. In that time, we've encountered ruins of 17 dead civilizations. Every single one was destroyed in first contact scenarios. Either they were too aggressive and provoked something stronger, or they were too peaceful and were conquered by something predatory." She paused, letting that sink in. "We learned from their mistakes. We developed a doctrine: appear weak, assess the threat, and respond accordingly. You've seen less than 10% of what this ship can do. If you continue this attack, I'll be forced to show you the rest, and I promise you won't survive the demonstration." "You're bluffing," Korthax snarled, but uncertainty crept into his harmonic tones. Torres sighed and nodded to someone off-screen. Suddenly, every Zalari ship's sensors went wild. Jump points were opening all around them, dozens of them. From each emerged another human vessel, all of them similar to the Perseverance, but each with subtle differences that suggested specialized roles. In seconds, the Zalari fleet went from outnumbering the humans 40-1 to being outnumbered 3-1. "The Perseverance is a scout ship, Commander," Torres explained calmly. We travel alone, make first contact, and assess whether new species are friends or foes. The fleet you see now, they've been waiting just outside your sensor range since we entered your space. We knew you were here. We chose to meet you. The tactical situation had completely reversed. The Zalari fleet, moments ago the dominant force, was now surrounded, outgunned, and facing an enemy whose capabilities they had drastically underestimated. Korthax's forearms trembled as he processed this reversal, but Torres wasn't finished. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your fleet to stand down. Then, you and I are going to have a conversation about boundaries, respect, and mutual benefit, because despite everything, we don't want to be your enemies. After all this destruction, you speak of peace? Korthax asked, incredulous. Commander, we've destroyed 6 of your ships and you've destroyed none of ours. By my count, that makes us the victors. Yet instead of pressing our advantage, we're offering dialogue. Where we come from, that's not weakness, it's strength. The ability to win and choose not to destroy your opponent is what separates civilization from barbarism. She stepped closer to the camera, her expression earnest. The Zalari Empire has ruled this region for 3,000 years through force and fear. But the galaxy is changing. New species are emerging. Older ones are awakening. Your empire can either adapt or face the same fate as those 17 dead civilizations we found. We're offering you a chance to adapt. Korthax's instincts screamed at him to fight, to die with honor rather than accept terms from these primitives. But looking at the tactical display, at his surrounded fleet, at the impossible human ships that had appeared from nowhere, he recognized a truth that his pride didn't want to accept. The Zalari had encountered something genuinely new, something that couldn't be conquered through traditional means. What are your terms? He asked, each word feeling like ground glass in his throat. Simple. Recognition of human sovereignty and territorial boundaries, a non-aggression pact, and most importantly, a technology and cultural exchange program. We have things to teach each other, Commander. Your quantum manipulation technology is centuries ahead of ours. Our adaptive warfare systems and gravitational weapons could benefit your fleet. Together we might actually have a chance. A chance against what? Velix asked, speaking for the first time directly to the humans. Torres's expression darkened. Against what's coming. Those 17 dead civilizations? They weren't all killed by other species. Something else is out there. Something that destroys spacefaring civilizations once they reach a certain level of development. We've seen the patterns, the evidence. It's coming, Commander. Maybe not today, maybe not this century, but it's coming. And when it arrives, do you want to face it alone? The bridge of the eternal supremacy fell silent. The implications of what the human captain was suggesting were staggering. If true, it changed everything the Zalari thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. Korthax made a decision that would reshape the future of both species. Stand down all weapons, he ordered his fleet. Then to Torres. Captain, I agree to your terms pending approval from the Imperial Senate. But first I have questions. Torres smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. So do we, Commander, so do we. Permission to come aboard? I think this conversation would be better held face to face. As the human shuttle departed from the Perseverance, heading toward the Zalari flagship, both fleets powered down their weapons. The first contact between humans and the Zalari had begun with violence, but it would end with something far more powerful. Understanding.